Chosen one. Something has changed inside you, not loudly, not with fanfare, but unmistakably. You feel it when you wake, a strange displacement from the life you have been living. The same room, the same people, the same responsibilities, yet none of it fits the way it used to. This is not confusion. This is not burnout. This is the signal that a wealth shift has already begun, and it started where no one else can see, inside you. Stay present. What follows will give you language for what your spirit already knows. You wake up and go through the motions. The routine is familiar. The faces are familiar. The tasks waiting for your attention have not changed, but something in how you relate to all of it has shifted. There is a quiet distance now between who you are and the life you are living. Not anger, not disappointment. Just a strange sense that the container no longer matches the content. This feeling did not arrive with warning. It crept in gradually, then all at once. One day you realized that conversations you used to enjoy now drain you. Goals you once chased with urgency now seem hollow. People you once needed validation from no longer hold that power. And you cannot explain why. Nothing external happened, no crisis, no dramatic event. Yet everything feels rearranged from the inside. Your spirit sensed the shift before your circumstances could explain it. This is not imagination, this is recognition. Something within you has outgrown the structure around you, and that friction is what you have been feeling. The discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It is evidence that something is right. You are no longer who you were, and your environment has not caught up yet. There's a quiet ache that comes with this territory. The loneliness of carrying something you cannot fully articulate. The frustration of feeling ready while doors remain closed. The fear, sometimes spoken, sometimes buried, that maybe you imagined the calling you sense so deeply. You have asked the question in private moments, why has my life not opened yet? Why do others seem to move forward while I remain held in place? That question is not weakness. It is the honest cry of someone who knows they were built for more, but cannot yet see the path. The pain of delay without explanation is one of the heaviest burdens to carry. It is invisible to others. It does not show up on the surface, but it sits in your chest, pressing against your faith, testing your patience, whispering that perhaps you misread the signs. You did not misread anything. The calling is real. The sense that you are not ordinary, that is accurate. What you have been interpreting as delay is not rejection. It is not punishment. It is not evidence that you missed your window. What you have been living through is preparation so precise that it could only be orchestrated by heaven itself. The architect has been at work in ways you could not perceive. Here is what most people miss during seasons like this. They assume that if God is moving, they would feel momentum. They expect breakthrough to arrive with noise and speed. But that is not how the architect operates. Before a building rises, there is foundation work. Before a harvest comes, there is hidden cultivation. Before authority is given, there is internal restructuring that no audience can witness. The discomfort you feel is not punishment. It is positioning. Your spirit has been recalibrated to reject what no longer fits, so that you do not settle for less than what has been assigned to you. The restlessness is strategic. It keeps you from building a life in the wrong location. It protects you from investing years into structures that were never meant to hold what is coming. Think of it this way. If you had received what you asked for 2 years ago, you would have been crushed by the weight of it. Not because the blessing was wrong, but because the vessel was not yet reinforced. Visibility without stability is dangerous. Increase without grounding destroys more lives than lack ever could. The architect knew this, and so he held you, not to harm you, to spare you. This message will not promise you instant breakthrough. It will not offer timelines or guarantees. What it will give you is something more valuable: clarity about what is actually happening beneath the surface of your life. You will receive language for experiences you have felt but could not name. You will understand why the old version of your life feels foreign now. And you will begin to recognize the architecture being built in secret, designed to hold what your hands will soon carry. The shift you are sensing is real. It is not emotional. It is not wishful thinking. It is the internal evidence that a transfer has already begun in the unseen realm. Wealth shifts do not start in bank accounts. They do not start in job offers or business deals. They start in the mind, in the spirit, in the quiet restructuring of how a person sees themselves, their time, their capacity, and their assignment. You are standing at the beginning of that restructuring. The signal has already been given. What remains is for you to understand it, align with it, and prepare for what it is leading you toward. But first, you must see what the architect has actually been doing during what you thought was silence. There is a lie that settles into the heart during long seasons of waiting. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive with force. It whispers. And because it whispers, it bypasses your defenses and plants itself deep where you barely notice it growing. The lie sounds like this: if it were meant to happen, it would have happened by now. You have heard that voice. Maybe not out loud, but in the quiet hours when you measure your progress against others. When you scroll through evidence of people who started after you but arrived before you. When you replay decisions and wonder which one was the mistake that cost you everything. That whisper turns delay into self-blame. It makes you the problem in a story where you were never the villain. But here is what that lie never tells you. It never distinguishes between being delayed and being preserved. These are not the same thing. Delay drains you. It holds you back from something you were ready for. Preservation protects you. It holds you back from something that would have destroyed the unprepared version of you. What you experienced was not delay. It was divine engineering. The architect does not work on human timelines. He does not measure progress the way your anxious mind does. While you were counting months and years, he was reinforcing foundations you did not know existed. While you were questioning his silence, he was rearranging systems, people, and circumstances that your eyes could not see. What felt like abandonment was actually the most intricate form of attention. I remember standing in that exact place, watching others accelerate while I felt cemented. I prayed for speed, not realizing that speed would have exposed fractures in me that had not yet healed. I thought I was ready. Heaven knew I was not. What I interpreted as silence was restraint. What I called delay was protection dressed in disappointing packaging. Looking back now, I can trace every closed door to a disaster I was spared from walking into. This is the shift that changes everything, moving from why is this happening to me to what is being built through me. The first question keeps you in victim posture. The second activates your awareness as a participant in divine construction. You are not a forgotten project. You are an ongoing one. And the architect does not rush what he intends to last. Consider what would have happened if you received the promotion, the platform, the relationship, or the wealth you asked for before this internal work was complete. Visibility would have magnified what was broken. Influence would have amplified what was unhealed. Resources would have funded patterns that needed to die, not expand. The architect saw this. He loved you enough to withhold what would have harmed you in its premature arrival. Chosen one. This reframe is essential for what comes next. If you continue to see yourself as someone who was left behind, you will walk into your next season with the posture of someone begging for scraps. But if you recognize that you are held with intention, you will walk in as someone who understands the weight of what they carry. Posture determines how you steward what you receive, and heaven pays attention to posture. Think about what you learned during the waiting. You learned how to stand without applause. You learned how to remain honest when shortcuts were available and no one would have known. You learned how to stay faithful when the evidence suggested your faith was wasted. You learned how to wait without becoming bitter. And that lesson alone separates you from thousands who could not. Those are not small developments. Those are the foundations of authority. Authority that can be trusted with wealth, influence, and access. The architect was not punishing you during the silence. He was certifying you. Every unanswered prayer was a brick. Every closed door was a beam. Every tear shed in private was mortar that held the structure together. You were not forgotten. You were being constructed. Now here is the part most people miss. The construction is almost complete. The internal architecture has reached a point where external manifestation becomes possible. Not because you earned it through suffering, but because you are finally capable of carrying it without collapse. The vessel has been reinforced. The foundation has been tested. What comes next is not reward for pain. It is the natural result of readiness meeting divine timing. But readiness requires one more element that most overlook. Before increase comes, there must be a clearing. Before new instruction can land, there must be space to receive it. The architect now turns his attention to silence, not as absence, but as strategy. You may have noticed it already. A growing desire for stillness that you did not choose. A pull towards solitude that feels less like loneliness and more like necessity. Where you once craved noise, activity, and constant connection, something in you now seeks space. Room to breathe. Moments where no one needs anything from you. This shift is not depression. It is not withdrawal from life. It is your spirit preparing for what requires clarity to receive. The architect uses silence strategically. Before he releases someone into abundance, he draws them into quietness. This pattern runs through Scripture and through the lives of everyone who carried significant assignment. Moses had the wilderness. David had years of hiding in caves. Elijah had the brook. Jesus had the desert. Silence was never punishment for them. It was preparation. The same is true for you. There is a reason clarity is born in stillness and not in noise. When your environment is loud, your spirit cannot distinguish between your own voice, the voices of others, and the voice of heaven. Everything blends together. Decisions become reactive instead of intentional. You say yes to things that drain you because you cannot hear the quiet, no rising from within. But when silence is embraced, discernment sharpens. You begin to sense what belongs and what does not, without needing external validation to confirm it. You may have found yourself pulling back from environments that once felt normal. Social settings that used to energize you now feel heavy. Conversations that once entertained you now seem shallow. People may have commented that you seem different, distant, or changed. They are not wrong, but they are only seeing the surface of something much deeper. You are not becoming antisocial. You are becoming aligned. And alignment requires separation from what disrupts it. This is not arrogance. It is not superiority. It is self-preservation in its most sacred form. The architect removes his chosen ones from distraction before entrusting them with direction. If you remained constantly surrounded by noise, you would miss the instruction meant only for you. Heaven speaks in whispers to those who have proven they can be still long enough to listen. Your withdrawal is not weakness. It is qualification. I remember when silence felt uncomfortable to me. I was so accustomed to movement, to striving to filling every gap with activity, that stillness seemed like failure. I thought productivity was proof of progress. I thought rest was for those who lacked ambition. But it was in the silence I once resisted that my spirit finally learned to listen instead of panic. That listening changed the trajectory of everything that followed. Here is what silence does that noise cannot. It reveals what you have been carrying that was never yours to hold. In constant motion, you do not notice the weight. You adapt to it. You assume the exhaustion is normal. But when you stop, when you let the stillness settle, you begin to feel what has been draining you. Relationships that cost more than they contribute. Commitments made from guilt rather than calling. Mental loops that replay fear and disguise it as planning. Silence exposes all of it. The urgency that once drove you is softening now. You still care about progress, but the desperation has faded. You still want to move forward, but you are no longer frantic. This shift is not passivity. It is trust being formed in places where anxiety used to live. When you move out of survival mode and into alignment, you stop chasing outcomes and start recognizing timing. You no longer rush because you no longer doubt that what is yours will find you. Anointed One, this season of quietness is not emptiness, it is recalibration. Your spirit is being tuned to frequencies it could not access while surrounded by static. The instructions for your next season are already being released, but they require a receiver that is not jammed with interference. Every moment of stillness you honor is a moment of reception you make possible. Do not let others make you feel guilty for needing space. Do not let their discomfort with your silence pressure you back into noise that no longer serves you. What God is building in this quietness is not for public observation. It is for private formation, and private formation always precedes public function, but silence alone is not enough. What you protect in stillness must also be guarded in practice. The next layer of preparation involves something more confrontational. Boundaries, not walls built from fear, but clarity, established from knowing what this season requires you to protect. The silence you have entered is not passive. It is doing active work inside you, restructuring how you think before it restructures what you receive. This is where the architect begins the most delicate phase of construction. Not in your circumstances, not in your opportunities, in your mind, because everything that will manifest externally must first be stabilized internally. A wealth shift that arrives before the mind is prepared becomes a burden, not a blessing. You may have already noticed the first evidence of this internal renovation. Your emotional responses are changing. Situations that once triggered immediate anxiety now pass through you with less resistance. Conversations that would have sent you spiraling into overthinking now barely register. People who once had the power to destabilize your mood no longer carry that authority. This is not numbness. This is not detachment. This is the result of emotional regulation being installed where reactivity once lived. Emotional regulation is not emotional suppression. Suppression buries what is unresolved and waits for it to resurface at inconvenient moments. Regulation processes what arises and responds with intention rather than impulse. The architect is not asking you to stop feeling. He is training you to stop being controlled by feeling. There is a difference between experiencing an emotion and being hijacked by it. What you are developing now is the ability to feel without being ruled. This matters more than you realize for what is coming. Wealth, influence, and authority all amplify whatever is already present in a person. If anxiety lives unchecked in your mind, increase will multiply that anxiety. If fear of loss dominates your internal dialogue, more resources will only create more to fear losing. The architect addresses the internal climate first because he knows that external increase poured into internal chaos produces destruction, not progress. There is another layer to this mental renovation. Old wounds are losing their charge. Memories that once carried sharp pain now feel more distant. You still remember what happened. The events have not been erased, but the emotional voltage attached to them has been reduced. You can revisit the past without being pulled back into it. This is healing, but not the kind that comes from forgetting. This is healing that comes from integration. The architect does not remove your history. He removes its power to dictate your future. Pay attention to your inner dialogue in this season. What you say to yourself now carries more weight than before. Not because the universe is listening in some mystical sense, but because your mind is being calibrated to align thought with trajectory. Fear, entertained internally, still shapes atmosphere. Doubt, rehearsed in private, still influences decisions. But the same is true in reverse. Trust, cultivated quietly, builds momentum. Gratitude practiced without audience creates internal conditions where provision can land without disruption. You are not being asked to perform positivity. You are being asked to become aware. Awareness is what keeps your momentum clean. When you notice a thought pattern that contradicts where you are headed, you now have the capacity to interrupt it. When you catch yourself rehearsing worst-case outcomes, you can choose not to continue the rehearsal. This is not denial, it is discipline. The mind either works for your assignment or against it. There is no neutral territory. Here is where this connects to practical reality. The same doubt you entertain about your worth will show up in how you negotiate your salary. The same fear of rejection you replay internally will influence how you price your services or present your ideas. The same scarcity mindset you allow to run unchecked will cause you to accept opportunities beneath your capacity simply because they arrived first. Your mental patterns are not abstract. They are blueprints that your external life builds upon. Chosen. One confusion delays outcomes. Clarity invites movement. As alignment increases within your thinking, you will notice that what you dwell on begins to manifest more quickly. Not because you are forcing reality to bend, but because reality responds to coherence. A scattered mind sends scattered signals. A focused mind creates focused results. What is forming in you now is the internal coherence that makes external breakthrough sustainable. Guard your thought life with intention, not from a place of fear that one wrong thought will derail you, but from a place of understanding that this season requires precision. You are being prepared for increase that will not tolerate mental clutter. The architect is clearing internal space because what he is sending requires room to land. But the mind is only the first layer of boundaries that must be established. What you think shapes what you speak. And what you speak in this season carries consequences you cannot afford to ignore. What forms in the mind eventually seeks expression through the mouth. This is why the architect does not stop at renovating your thought patterns. He moves next to what you speak. In this season, your words carry different weight than they did before. Not because language has magically changed, but because you have. A person in alignment speaks from a different source than a person in survival. and the source determines the impact. You may have already sensed this shift beginning. There is a new hesitation before you speak in certain situations. Words that once flowed automatically now pause at the threshold. Opinions you would have offered freely now feel unnecessary to share. This is not insecurity. It is discernment being applied to your speech. The architect is teaching you that not every thought requires vocalization. Not every observation needs to be announced. Restraint is not weakness. It is stewardship of a resource most people waste without realizing its value. Consider how much energy you have lost through unnecessary speech, explaining yourself to people who were never going to understand, defending decisions to those who had no authority over your path, processing out loud with individuals who lacked the wisdom to hold what you shared. Every word spent in the wrong direction is energy withdrawn from the right one. This season requires conservation. What you are building cannot afford the leaks that careless speech creates. Stop explaining your journey to people who only understand results, not process. This is one of the most difficult disciplines for those who desire to be understood. You want others to see what you see, to validate the path you are walking when the evidence is still invisible. But that desire left unchecked leads you to casting vision before people who will trample it with doubt. Not everyone has the capacity to hold what God is doing in you. And sharing with the wrong audience does not relieve your burden. It multiplies it by adding their confusion to your clarity. There is a difference between speaking from anxiety and speaking from alignment. Words born from anxiety seek to control outcomes. They over-explain, over-promise, and over-defend. They come from a posture of proving, trying to convince others or yourself that you are legitimate. Words born from alignment carry a different quality. They are measured, they are confident without being aggressive. They do not need to fill silence because silence does not threaten them. Pay attention to which source your words flow from. The origin shapes the outcome. Here is where this becomes practical. Notice how you speak about your finances, your work, your future. Are your words creating space for what you believe is coming, or are they closing doors before they open? When you constantly verbalize lack, you reinforce lack as your reality. When you speak about opportunity as if it is reserved for others, you train your mind to filter out the opportunities meant for you. This is not about magical thinking. It is about recognizing that your speech patterns reveal and reinforce your deepest beliefs. Anointed One, there is power in selective disclosure. Not everything forming in you needs to be announced. Not every plan requires external validation. Not every blessing needs to be broadcast the moment it arrives. Some things grow better in hiddenness. Premature exposure invites opinions that can derail obedience. Learn to carry in silence what does not yet need to be spoken. Let the fruit mature before you invite others to inspect the tree. I learned this the hard way. There were seasons when I shared too soon, too openly with too many. The excitement of what was forming made me eager to verbalize it. But words spoken prematurely attracted interference I was not prepared to navigate. People who meant well offered concerns that planted doubt. Others who did not mean well used what I shared to position themselves. What was meant to be protected became exposed, and the exposure cost more than the temporary relief of being understood. Guard what is forming. Not everything that is real is ready to be revealed. There will be a time for testimony. There will be a moment for declaration. But this is not that moment. This is the season of formation, and formation requires covering. The architect is building something that will speak for itself when the time is right. Until then, your silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. But words are not the only thing that must be stewarded in this season. There is a third boundary that many overlook until it costs them dearly. It is not about what you think or what you say. It is about who you allow to access you. And that boundary may be the most difficult of all to establish. You have guarded your mind. You have measured your words. But there is a third boundary that will determine whether the first two hold. It is not about what happens inside you or what comes out of your mouth. It is about who you allow to come close. Access. In this season, access to you is no longer free. It carries a cost. And those who cannot pay that cost in alignment, respect, and mutual growth must be released, no matter how long they have been present. You may have already felt this shifting. Relationships that once felt essential now feel strangely hollow. Connections you maintained for years have begun to fade, not through conflict or betrayal, but through something quieter. The conversations repeat without depth. The resonance you once shared has dissolved. When you are together, there is presence but no connection. This is not failure. This is transition. And transition always involves release. The architect does not remove people from your life to punish you or them. He removes them to create space for what is coming. Every relationship carries weight. Some carry weight that strengthens you. Others carry weight that slowly drains resources you cannot afford to lose. In previous seasons, you could absorb that drain because the demands on you were smaller. But where you are going requires full capacity. Carrying unnecessary weight into a new season creates unnecessary strain. Not everyone who walked with you through the last season is authorized for the next one. This is not judgment. It is divine logistics. Some people were assigned to your waiting. They served a purpose in that chapter, but their assignment ended when the chapter closed. Holding on to them beyond their authorization does not honor the history you shared. It delays the future you are both meant to step into separately. This is where it becomes painful, because some of the people being removed are not bad people. They did not betray you. They did not harm you intentionally. They simply cannot go where you are going. Their capacity, their vision, their willingness to grow has reached its limit. And your continued connection to them keeps you anchored to a version of yourself that no longer exists. Love them from a distance. Honor what was. But do not let sentiment overrule assignment. Chosen one, think of your energy as capital. Every relationship is an investment. Every conversation, every meeting, every moment of emotional labor either yields return or depletes principal. In this season, you are being asked to audit your relational investments with honesty. Where is their return? Where is their consistent withdrawal with no deposit? Where have you been funding connection out of guilt, obligation, or fear of loneliness rather than genuine alignment? Boundaries are not walls. Walls are built from fear and keep everything out, including what is meant to enter. Boundaries are built from clarity. They filter. They allow what aligns and redirect what does not. Establishing boundaries does not mean you become cold, unkind, or inaccessible. It means you become intentional, and intention is what separates those who steward their season well from those who squander it through scattered availability. I learned this through loss. There were relationships I held on to longer than wisdom advised. Not because they were still life-giving, but because I feared the loneliness of release. The separation, when it finally came, was more painful than it needed to be because I delayed what was already inevitable. Looking back, I can see that heaven was trying to clear my calendar long before I cooperated. The resistance was mine, not his. Saying no will become an act of obedience in this season, not avoidance. There will be invitations that look good but feel wrong. Opportunities to reconnect with people from your past who sense your shift and want proximity to it. Requests for your time, your wisdom, your presence from those who did not value these things when they were freely given. You must learn to decline without guilt. Not every open door is an authorized door. Not every returning face is a welcomed assignment. Here is the truth that makes this easier. You are not being abandoned through these separations. You are being repositioned. The architect is moving you toward people who can recognize and honor who you are becoming, not who you used to be. Relationships built on your former identity will always try to pull you back to that version. Relationships aligned with your assignment will call you forward. The space being created now is not emptiness. It is preparation for connection that matches your trajectory. What you've protected in your mind, guarded in your speech, and filtered in your access has prepared you for what comes next. The boundaries were not the destination. They were the clearing. Now the deeper work begins. Mastery. Not of circumstances, but of the internal authority that makes external results inevitable. The boundaries you have established were never the end goal. They were the clearing that made the next phase possible. What begins now goes deeper than protection. It enters the territory of mastery. Not mastery over external circumstances which you cannot fully control, but mastery over the internal kingdom where all lasting authority is first established. A person who rules themselves well will eventually rule much. A person who cannot govern their inner world will lose whatever they gain in the outer one. The first sign of this mastery emerging is a shift in how you experience time. You may have noticed it already. Days pass, yet certain moments feel strangely expanded. Hours that once raced by in anxiety now move with a different rhythm. You are less haunted by the past, less controlled by projections of the future. Your mind returns to the present moment more easily than before. This is not detachment from reality. It is deeper engagement with it. The present moment is where heaven operates most clearly. Anxiety about tomorrow disconnects you from the instruction available today. Regret about yesterday blinds you to what is being offered now. When these lose their grip, something profound happens. You become available. Not just busy, not just productive, but genuinely present to receive what is being released in real time. The architect works in the now. Those who live everywhere except now miss what he is building right in front of them. This shift in time perception changes how you work. Frantic energy is replaced by focused intensity. You accomplish more because you are no longer splitting attention between the task at hand and the fears surrounding it. Deadlines feel different. Not because they matter less, but because you are no longer working from panic. Panic produces activity. Presence produces progress. The quality of your output increases because the quality of your attention has been purified. There is another dimension of mastery forming in you now. Your understanding of wealth is being redefined. For most of your life, wealth meant accumulation. More money, more possessions, more security against an uncertain future. But that definition is shifting. Wealth is beginning to mean something else. Capacity. The ability to respond without strain, the freedom to give without depletion, the strength to build without burning out in the process. This redefinition changes everything about how you pursue and steward resources. When wealth means accumulation, you hoard. When wealth means capacity, you invest. When wealth means accumulation, you fear loss constantly. When wealth means capacity, you focus on increasing what you can handle rather than simply what you can hold. The architect does not elevate his chosen ones to impress anyone. He elevates them to solve problems, create stability, and establish environments where others can breathe. That requires capacity, not just cash. Consider what this means for your work, your business, your career. You are no longer building to prove something. You are building to house something. The difference is subtle but crucial. Proving requires constant external validation. Housing requires internal solidity. One exhausts you, the other sustains you. As your definition of wealth shifts, your motivation for pursuing it shifts as well, and motivation determines whether increase becomes a blessing or a trap. Anointed One, notice also how your desires have refined. You are less interested in excess and more drawn to effectiveness. The appeal of impressing others has faded. What remains is a quieter ambition rooted in alignment rather than applause. This refinement is not loss of drive, it is purification of drive. Excess without purpose becomes distraction. Purpose without restraint becomes exhaustion. The architect balances both by shaping what you want. When desire aligns with assignment, provision flows without obstruction. There is a subtle shift happening in your posture toward provision itself. You are learning to live from abundance rather than toward it. This is not denial of current reality, it is a change in orientation. Living toward abundance keeps you in a state of constant reaching, constant striving, always feeling behind. Living from abundance means operating as though what you need is already handled, which frees you to focus on what you are meant to build, rather than what you are afraid to lose. This posture changes how opportunities perceive you. Desperation repels. Groundedness attracts. When you stop grasping, you become magnetic to what was always meant to find you. Not through passivity, but through the quiet confidence of someone who knows their supply is not dependent on their panic. But mastery of the inner throne is not complete without one final dimension: discernment, the ability to distinguish between what is offered and what is assigned. That distinction will determine whether the doors now opening lead to expansion or exhaustion. Discernment is the final pillar of inner mastery. Without it, everything else you have built becomes vulnerable. You can guard your mind, steward your words, protect your access, redefine wealth, and still be dismantled by one misaligned decision. Discernment is what prevents that. It is the filter that separates what is offered from what is assigned. And in this season, that filter will be tested more than ever before. You may have already noticed your discernment sharpening. You sense when something is off before you can explain why. Your body registers hesitation before your mind constructs the logic. Conversations that seem fine on the surface leave a residue you cannot ignore. Opportunities that check every visible box still produce an internal friction you have learned not to dismiss. This is not paranoia. This is not pessimism. This is intuition being restored to its original function. Discernment is not suspicion. Suspicion assumes the worst and searches for evidence to confirm it. Discernment simply pays attention without agenda. It notices what is present and what is missing. It feels the difference between peace and mere excitement. It recognizes when something aligns with your assignment and when something merely aligns with your appetite. The architect trains his chosen ones to distinguish these quickly, because hesitation at the wrong door can cost years of recovery. Here is where this becomes practical. As your alignment increases, opportunities will multiply. Some will come because of your growth. Others will come because of your visibility. Not all of them carry the same authorization. A door that opens is not automatically a door you should walk through. Open doors test discernment. They reveal whether you are still chasing anything that looks like progress, or whether you have learned to wait for what is specifically assigned. Chosen one. Not every opportunity that excites you is meant for you. Some opportunities will look right on paper, but feel wrong in your spirit. The numbers may work. The timing may seem perfect. Others may encourage you to move quickly before the window closes, but something in you hesitates. That hesitation is not fear. It is information. Learn to trust it. Wealth that comes from God is protected by discernment, not driven by impulse. What is truly yours will not require you to override your own knowing to obtain it. I have walked away from opportunities that others would have seized without question. In the moment, it felt like foolishness. The logic was sound. The potential was visible, but my spirit would not settle. I could not manufacture peace no matter how many times I reviewed the details. Later, sometimes months later, I understood what I had been protected from. The opportunity was real, but it was not mine. Taking it would have positioned me in a structure that was about to collapse. Discernment saved me from succeeding my way into failure. There is another dimension to this. Trust will now be tested differently than before. In previous seasons, trust was tested through lack. Could you believe when there was nothing to see? Could you hold on when evidence was absent? You passed those tests. But the tests are changing. Now, trust will be tested through abundance, through options, through the pressure of multiple possibilities competing for your attention. Can you remain aligned when distraction disguises itself as opportunity? Can you say no to good things in order to remain available for the right things? When options multiply, alignment must lead. Discernment becomes daily practice rather than occasional necessity. Before every decision, the questions shift. Not just can I, but should I? Not just is this good, but is this assigned? Not just will this work, but will this last? These questions slow you down intentionally. Speed is not the goal. Precision is. The architect is not building something temporary in you. What is constructed with discernment endures. What is constructed with haste cannot survive. Finally, remember this. The practices that stabilized you during waiting must not be abandoned during increase. Stillness, reflection, prayer, rest. These are not rewards for later. They are anchors for now. Many people lose alignment, not because they lacked faith, but because they neglected maintenance. They assumed that breakthrough meant they could stop doing what brought them to breakthrough. They were wrong. Elevation without maintenance leads to collapse. You are being taught differently. The architect builds sustainability into those he trusts with scale. He does not release resources to people who will burn out under the weight of them. Your continued practices of inner stillness are not signs that you have not arrived. They are evidence that you understand how arrival is sustained. What you have mastered internally has prepared you for what shifts externally. The mind is clear, the words are measured, the access is filtered, the discernment is sharp. Now comes the final phase, positioning, where you take everything that has been built in secret and begin to walk it into the visible world. There comes a moment when something settles inside you that no external circumstance can unsettle. It is not a feeling of triumph. It is not a rush of excitement. It is quieter than that, deeper. It is the moment when you realize you are no longer asking permission to step into what has been prepared for you, not from people, not from systems, not even from your own fears. Something inside has come into agreement with heaven, and that agreement carries an authority you did not have before. This is the shift from preparation to positioning. Everything built in silence now begins to move into visibility. Not because you forced it, not because you marketed it, but because internal readiness creates external inevitability. The architect does not construct something this carefully only to leave it hidden forever. What was formed in the dark is meant to function in the light. Your emergence is not arrogance, it is obedience to the design. You may feel this authority settling in ways that surprise you. Decisions that once required days of deliberation now resolve more quickly. Not because you're being careless, but because clarity has replaced confusion. You know what aligns with your assignment and what does not. You know what deserves your energy and what is a distraction wearing opportunities' clothing. This knowing is not intellectual, it is integrated. It lives in your body as much as your mind. Notice how your posture has changed. You no longer enter rooms hoping to be chosen. You enter knowing what you carry. This is not ego. Ego announces itself and demands recognition. Authority simply stands. It does not need to convince. It does not need to perform. It operates from a settled sense of legitimacy that was granted from above, not assembled from below. People may not be able to name what is different about you, but they will feel it, and their response to you will begin to shift accordingly. Anointed one. This is where confidence matures into something unshakable, not confidence in your abilities alone, which can waver when abilities are tested, but confidence in the one who assigned you, which remains constant regardless of circumstance. You stop asking whether you are allowed to occupy certain spaces and start recognizing that your presence in those spaces is part of the plan. The question is no longer, am I ready? The question is now, will I be faithful to what I have been prepared for? Faithfulness at this level carries weight. The decisions you make from this point forward are no longer only about you. They ripple. What you build affects others who will work within it, live within it, be shaped by it. This is not pressure meant to paralyze you. It is awareness meant to mature you. Immaturity seeks freedom without responsibility. It wants authority without accountability. But what you have been trained for is different. You are learning to embrace responsibility as the highest form of freedom, the freedom to shape something that outlasts you. Here is where comparison finally dies. Not because you suppress it, but because it becomes irrelevant. You are no longer measuring your progress against anyone else's timeline. You have seen too clearly that your path required preparation others did not need. What looked like delay was customization. What looked like being left behind was being set apart. When you understand this fully, the success of others stops threatening you. It becomes information, sometimes inspiration, but never again a measure of your worth. Freedom from comparison keeps your spirit clean. A clean spirit can handle increase without corruption. It can celebrate others without secretly resenting them. It can receive its own portion without guilt or apology. This cleanliness is not automatic. It is the result of everything you have walked through. The waiting, the silence, the boundary setting, the mastery, all of it composted into a soil where clean authority can grow. Consider what this means for your work, your finances, your influence. You are now capable of holding more without it distorting you. Wealth can come without making you arrogant. Recognition can come without making you dependent on it. Doors can open without you losing yourself in the rooms behind them. This capacity did not exist before. It was built layer by layer through every season you thought was wasted. Nothing was wasted. Everything was investment. The architect does not position someone and then abandon them to figure out the rest alone. What he initiates, he sustains. What he opens, he guards. Your role is not to manufacture outcomes from this position. Your role is to remain faithful within it. Faithfulness looks like continued alignment, continued discernment, continued willingness to say no to what is good, so you remain available for what is assigned. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not an afterthought in the economy of heaven. You are positioned. Positioned does not mean comfortable. It means ready. It means standing at the threshold where everything internal becomes external. The transfer you have sensed is not metaphor. It is logistics being finalized in the unseen realm. But positioning is not the final word. There is one more movement required. One more step that takes everything that has been built and walks it fully into the reality you were always meant to inhabit. What remains now is not more preparation. It is activation. The commissioning of a life that has been made ready to carry what others cannot yet see. You are not waiting anymore. That season has closed. Not because you forced it shut, but because the internal construction reached its completion. What remains now is not more preparation. It is not another round of refinement. It is the commissioning of everything that was built in hiddenness to now function in the open. The architect does not over-prepare his chosen ones. When the building is complete, occupation begins. This may feel unfamiliar. You have become so accustomed to the posture of waiting that stepping forward feels almost uncomfortable. There is a strange grief that sometimes accompanies the end of preparation. You learned how to wait well. You found rhythm in the silence, and now you are being asked to move, and movement requires a different kind of trust. Not trust that something is coming, but trust that what has come is truly yours to carry. Let this truth settle into your bones. You are not standing at the threshold, hoping for permission. You are standing at the threshold because permission has already been granted. The internal shift you have felt was not imagination. The wealth shift that began in your mind, your words, your relationships, your capacity was never meant to stay internal. It was always headed here, to the moment where the invisible becomes visible, where what was formed in secret begins to operate in plain sight. What unfolds from this point forward does not require force. Force is the language of those who doubt their authorization. You are not among them, not anymore. What unfolds requires faithfulness, showing up consistently, making aligned decisions repeatedly, honoring the boundaries you established even when comfort tempts you to abandon them. Faithfulness is not glamorous, but it is the only currency heaven recognizes for sustained increase. Chosen one. The provision you have sensed approaching is not reward for your suffering. It is the natural result of readiness, meeting divine timing. You were not shaped by those difficult years merely to endure them. You were shaped to become someone capable of stewarding what those years made possible. Everything you endured was not designed to make you tough. It was designed to make you wise, and wisdom preserves what strength alone cannot sustain. You were not built for survival. That was never the ceiling over your life. You were built for stewardship, for managing resources, influence, and opportunity in ways that extend beyond your own comfort. The architect invests this heavily only in those he trusts with multiplication. What you carry is not meant to terminate with you. It is meant to flow through you to destinations you may not yet see. This is the weight of commissioning. It is heavier than waiting, but it is the weight you were prepared to bear. I speak this over you now, not as formula, but as recognition of what heaven has already set in motion. Peace over your mind, which has been trained to remain clear when chaos invites confusion. Clarity over your decisions, which will come faster now because alignment has replaced anxiety. Strength over your spirit, which has been tested and did not break. May doors open without striving. May provision come without the strain of manipulation or the exhaustion of forcing. May favor rest on you in ways that leave no room for doubt that this was orchestrated by hands wiser than your own. You are standing in your kairos moment. Not chronos, the ordinary passage of time, but kairos, the appointed intersection where preparation meets permission and everything accelerates. This moment was scheduled before you knew to ask for it. The architect does not improvise. He does not react. He plans across generations, and your placement in this moment is part of a design that stretches beyond what your eyes can currently trace. What feels different in you is real. The shift was not emotional. It was structural, and structures built by heaven do not collapse under the weight of what heaven sends to fill them. You have been made ready, not perfect, but ready. Readiness is not the absence of weakness. It is the presence of capacity that exceeds the demands of the assignment. Go forward from here, not with anxiety about what you might miss, but with confidence in what has already been secured. Guard your alignment as you move. Stay close to the stillness that taught you how to hear. Maintain the boundaries that protected your becoming. Let discernment continue to filter what approaches you. These are not practices for the waiting season alone. They are the infrastructure of sustainability for everything that follows. If this word has resonated with something deep in your spirit, if you recognize the shift that has been unfolding within you, consider this moment a marker. You may leave a word below the place you are receiving this from as a way of honoring what has stirred. And if you sense that this space carries alignment for your continued journey, you are welcome to remain connected, not for content, but for continued awakening. Go forward in peace, anointed one. What began in you will not return empty. The shift is real, and it has only just begun to manifest.